Welcome to High Growth Matters, an OpenComp podcast for influential players in the pre-IPO ecosystem. This show shares insider knowledge about building a badass business, and the expert conversation you're about to hear will cover everything you need to know about hiring and retention, fundraising, leadership, diversity, and more. Let's get to it. Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin Allen, the VP of Marketing at OpenComp, which is the maker of the world's first compensation software platform that gives clarity at every single point of decision about pay.
And good morning. I'm Nancy Connery. I am co-founder of OpenComp and principal at Connery Consulting, and I am honored to be here today.
Yes, thank you for joining us. So we all know that in a candidates market, moving quickly matters a lot. And so in this episode, we are going to talk with Nick Vossler about how he decreased his employer's time to hire by 32% in 1 quarter. And he did that without compromising a candidate NPS score of 92%. So pretty pumped to dive into that. Nick is someone that Nancy and I both know fairly well. Not to his benefit, but definitely to ours. Nick is currently a senior recruiter at OpenComp, and he has spent time recruiting go-to-market and technical roles at companies like HouseCanary and recruiting firms like Connery Consulting and Michael Page. So, Nick, welcome.
Well, thank you so much. And I will first say it is definitely a mutual benefit having worked with you both here. So let's make sure we get that straight out of the gate.
We paid you well.
Nick, we're thrilled to be here with you today. Can you share with this audience, something that people don't automatically know about you?
Let's see. So I posted a lot about my hockey experience and background on my LinkedIn. So I guess we'll surprise them a little bit with something a bit more artistic. Up until about midway through high school, I was actually a very skilled pianist. I played piano from basically age 7 to 16. Then kind of high school sports got in the way, and that was the end of my dedicated folks there. But every now and then I can whip up a good rendition of Pure Elise or a couple others. But something not a lot of people know about me.
We'll be calling you for our next party.
Oh, you bet.
Definitely. Oh my goodness. All right, so Nick, let's state the obvious here, because clearly we all know each other. How do we all know each other?
Yeah, so I guess let's go back a ways to May 2021. Was reached out to by some of the fine consultants at Connery Consulting, some folks that I had met on my team formerly at Michael Page. They introduced me to Jenica, to Nancy, and before you knew it, joined the team over there. That was, my first 7 months, I was working with a client that you've already mentioned called HouseCanary. It was a really great experience. First time in an RPO environment, kind of getting some internal exposure, and first time being, within a startup. My prior 2 companies were publicly traded, so that was cool as well. My one takeaway though was, hey, this has been amazing, but I kind of want to get the exposure to actually building something from the ground up. And so as the year progressed, I was working with, my manager over at Connery, shout out to Emmy Robles. And she said, well, look, our sister company, OpenComp, you're not going to find too many things that are this fresh on. It was, only a year old at the time. She's like, there's a great opportunity and great need there. So maybe we'll try that out for a bit. So early, I think it was January 3rd, like right at the start of the year, I moved over to OpenComp as a client. So I was consulting there. Really, really loved my experience. And, 4 months into that, was so humbled to get a full-time offer and was able to convert over to the OpenComp team.
And on a personal note, I was very excited from a professional standpoint because we needed the help. And Nick, you've been incredible from that standpoint. But fun fact, Nick and I both live in Denver, and we have single-handedly been making that our second largest location as a company. So go Denver. So let's dive into the topic at hand, Nick. So in 1 quarter, like I said at the introduction, you and a couple other folks decreased time to hire by 32% while maintaining a consistent candidate feedback score of 92%. So Pretty impressive. Let's dig into the facts. Can you tell us a little bit about what your time to hire was in the first quarter and in the second? Let's just call them Q1 and Q2 to keep things simple.
Cool. So I guess we'll start with Q1. So Q1, that first month of Q1, basically our starting point, we were averaging around 65 days to hire, which is a very long time. I mean, 2 whole months of being in a process can really wear out a candidate, and it doesn't really show the most interest in a candidate either. So definitely was something that we wanted to identify and certainly cut into. So the next couple months of Q1, we actually managed to get it to an average of 41, which was really quick returns. And then, throughout Q2, we've actually averaged 33 days to hire. So really making some major cuts into that timeline.
Impressive.
You.
So, and what made you decide you needed to speed the time to hire? What was kind of some of the comparables that you had seen? What had your experience told you, that this was something that you needed to, jump right on?
Yeah, I guess, first and foremost, there's some bigger companies that, they might have the luxury of, this brand presence and established track records and things like that might keep people engaged for a couple months. But if you're a startup, just kind of getting your name out there and still establishing your messaging and making sure people are aware of you, it's important to demonstrate that agility to, show that you're very interested in the candidate. But also, if you're able to streamline it, it shows you've got your processes figured out. A lot of people would hesitate to join a company if it's really disjointed and lengthy process that's kind of broken up in a few ways. So, really, I think those are really the critical pieces of implementing a little more speed. Also, in a prior life, in agency recruiter life, and also as a former SaaS sales exec, I learned that time kills all deals. So that's always been something kind of embedded in me.
And were we seeing, was offer acceptance low, or was candidate attrition high because of that lengthy process?
Oh yeah. No, when you have an offer, for example, we would have offers out for a really long time that really lengthened out our process for time to hire. That's that. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But in short, yes, the acceptance rate was not great. And so kind of streamlining that, and for the various reasons I've listed, we really needed to improve that to increase our success, honestly.
Great. So we've talked about a couple of the, shall we call them symptoms, right, of the impact of suboptimal time to hire, low offer acceptance and candidate attrition, those kind of things. What were the causes, or at least what did you believe were the causes before you dove into solving them?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, that you want to have streamlined, repeatable processes. When we were first starting out and kind of evaluating where there were problematic bottlenecks and things, number one was, your hiring manager might say well, I think this person should talk to this person next. And it's kind of just a loosey-goosey opinion on who they need to meet with. What you really want to do is actually have something established, focused, and aligned that can make the process repeatable. And that actually does factor into some of the bias and removes that. If you have, a repeatable process, meet with the same people, do the same questions, you're going to get a better gauge of, who's better talent as well. And then, like I mentioned, the offers were out for way too long. We got in and, there's one thing where you're providing white glove service and being like, yes, it's okay if you wrap up your 5 other interview processes, and that might be next month. But really what you're doing is you're kind of pigeonholing yourself as an employer to that your offer is going to be leveraged. And if, this is a talented candidate, you don't want that to happen because they will get other offers that might beat yours. So those are 2 of the primary ones. There was also some hesitations from some of the folks throughout the interview process around I don't know if we want to move them forward. And you really need to work with your hiring team to make sure that they have a clear decision after they speak with a candidate.
I definitely agree with all of that. And, time to hire, I think, is of essence. And also it allows you to put yourself in the candidate's shoes as well and what they're going through while they're, going through that experience, and making it as efficient as possible is really beneficial for everybody involved. Now, in reducing the time to hire, you did focus and have focused and prioritized on branding work. What and why? What's the importance of that to you as it relates to recruitment and, candidate experience as well?
Yeah, I think it helps save time for a recruiter if you are able to get to really improve your branding as a company, right? For applicant generation, a recognizable brand that people see and want to join really helps your inbound applicant flow initially. So you get your name out there, people learn about what you're doing, and it resonates with them. That's saving the time of going through like LinkedIn or burying yourself in sourcing work first. If you've got qualified people who've heard about you up front, they read great things about you, you're going to get candidates a lot sooner. So that also feeds into that time to hire as well. I will say it's kind of going to the time to hire again. When I was joining Connery, I was super impressed as a candidate by how quickly we were able to get all the next steps involved and set up. So that made it a lot easier of a decision for me as well.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And then in terms of that branding work, so what branding work did you prioritize, or did we prioritize together?
Yeah, so I think first we wanted to establish candidate experience surveys. We didn't have any surveys in place when I first got here, so we really didn't know how we were doing from an NPS perspective. So job number one, let's make sure we are doing something that candidates enjoy. Make sure they have a pleasant experience. Even if we don't hire them, we want people walking away with a good feeling about their process, right? So first we established those experience surveys. Secondly, we focus on Glassdoor ratings, right? Again, if you have bad candidate experiences, you're going to get bad Glassdoor ratings as well. And I mean, this shouldn't surprise people, but there's a lot of candidates who have jumped on the phone with me and have said, hey, I'm pretty much on the phone with you because I looked at OpenComp's page on Glassdoor and I thought, wow, all right, the reviews are great. Let's talk to them. So that was another thing. We really focused in on that. We did some internal work as well, worked with existing employees at OpenComp to make sure they're submitting their actual experiences at OpenComp and getting their opinions out there, because from all of the work we've done internally, we're finding that people are enjoying their time here. So let's tell people about it. That also leads into our Great Place to Work certification. That was a big project for me and my manager. We took that on. Again, extra thing out there that people have recognized. That's an extra piece of brand recognition, I suppose you could say. But that really gave us some insights into where we are succeeding and where there's areas to improve as far as our company culture and brand as well. So that was also nice. And lastly, I guess I'll mention we did launch a LinkedIn employee spotlight piece. This is kind of a project that I'm running every month where, we're basically doing something that's a little more casual, sending out some questions to, our existing employees, kind of ask them like, why you joined OpenComp, what do you do here? And then, allow for some creative flexibility in answers and questions as well. So people really get to know us.
Yeah, and my team's worked with yours on that a bit. And I think what I've appreciated about that at LinkedIn Employee Spotlight campaign is you've done a really good job of matching the folks who appear or are featured first to both our values as a company and our priorities in recruiting, right? So we needed to hire engineers, and so we spotlighted some engineers, and we really, really care about diversity. And so we made sure that we included those kind of angles in the questions and also in the people that were highlighted first. And then, now we're focused on the go-to-market roles for the sales team predominantly. And so that really influenced that particular month. So I thought that was really thoughtful in terms of like almost creating a candidate funnel, so to speak, and how you were approaching the candidate top of funnel. And then if I can also, just from an internal marketing perspective, in my experience, that's where a lot of marketing teams and HR teams can fall down if they don't effectively ask people on the team in a way that shows them what the value is for them to do things like give a Glassdoor rating or to take the Great Place to Work certification. And so, like with the Glassdoor rating, like we had different things in all hands. We mentioned it on Slack several times. We created the email card for the bottom of email signatures that said how high our ratings were. And like you did a really good job of creating pride in the company around what our rating was. And we all took part in that. So we all felt pride. Working at home, we all have that. And then related to the Great Place to Work certification, I think this was probably the best run process I've ever seen done in a company, where the volume of reminders, the reasons why it was valuable for the people that took the survey, and the variety of channels that were used. We used the employee newsletter, we used all hands, we used Slack, we had email, we had one-on-ones. It was mentioned in ELT every week. Done very well, such that everyone felt like it was something they owned rather than just something HR was doing. So kudos to you on that for sure. And I should also.
It's so great to see from both of you the partnership that really exists truly between the recruitment team and marketing. You don't see that so much in early stage startups. And then you also don't so much see really the strategic approach that both teams have taken as they have come together. And I think, it shows in the results and the scores and the candidate experience. So, kudos to you guys for sure. Nick, I know that you have been pretty focused on, and I share this sentiment with you too, in terms of, decreasing the time that you give candidates to make a decision on an offer once it's made. Can you tell us a little bit about your philosophy around that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I said, initially there was kind of a practice in place where, recruitment was content to wait on a candidate until they had all their processes done. And I understand, you don't want to pressure somebody into a situation where they don't feel comfortable joining your company, but also you don't want to rush people into a decision either. So it's kind of working to find that balance and establishing kind of this mutual respect between, employee and employer. At a certain point, they have to understand the point of view of the employer, where, hey, if this offer is out for 4 weeks, that really hurts us. And let's start this relationship on a good note as well. So, I understand, you don't want to come off as inflexible. And, if you're really giving a candidate anything over a week, though, it's really just opening the doors for, that offer to be used as leverage, frankly. So, I think most people, if you're transparent with them about that, they kind of get it. So again, that mutual respect goes miles. And I think it also helps in whether they'll accept or not, in addition to kind of, cutting off the timeline on that.
Well, and can I just say too, like as a hiring manager, if it takes someone a week to decide if they want to join my team, I don't want them on my team anyways. So
you probably don't want to be on there.
Exactly. Right. So I think it just makes good common sense. Nick, one of the things, or I guess a couple things that I want to touch on before I ask you a little bit more about outcomes that I think have benefited, I know my team for sure, in the process of making an offer, is the tool that you put in place, as well as kind of the interview templates and the training you've provided for the team, as well as the postmortem that you've set up. So can we dive really quickly into that around, like, what was your criteria for selecting a tool, and then what was your process as you put together that hiring committee process where you guided us with all the tools, all the templates, all the trainings, and the postmortem?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we'll first start with the tool. So we implemented a new ATS. There was a few, we worked together as a team to figure out what sort of functionality we found to be paramount in an ATS, and we're not getting at that time with our existing ATS. I'll stray away from bashing any names and logos here, but we made a switch over to a different tool that met all of those needs and provided us a lot of really cool stuff, like insights into our process, easy to use analytics. It was also a sourcing tool, so it was pretty awesome there. In addition to getting the right ATS in place, you have to kind of take the time to develop what those streamlined processes look like, right? So making sure we had interview templates in place. What should a good process look like? there was a study done, I want to say it was like Google or something like that, where, they said, basically, if you have 4 people interview somebody, anywhere between, I think it's like 4 and 10 people, if they got 4 yeses 90% of the time or something like that, all 10 were going to be yeses. So we, one of the things I really have pushed for is making sure that we don't go above 4. That piece has been huge, but so that was a big change. Interview templates were a big change because, like I said, it was kind of, I think they should talk to this person next and then this person, and there wasn't really anything in place as far as the process. Then, like you were referring to, I actually did launch a totally new recruiting engagement process, which includes kind of a kickoff with all of the interviewees. There's meetings between the hiring manager and the recruiters to help get aligned on what they need to hire and what the key competencies are for that role, and making sure they're identifying what that gap is that you're trying to fill with that hire. And then from a recruitment perspective, it's my job to facilitate that the easiest process possible, not only for candidates but also for my interviewers. So I developed some templates around good questions asked, how do you gauge for certain competencies, competency rubrics, reference check templates. I mean, you can provide the tools for the interviewers. They've got busy lives as well, so just doing my best to support them. And then, like you mentioned, we also have a post-mortem of sorts, a debrief to better understand after every candidate's process, how'd we do? Did we feel like that went well? Do we feel like we're, missing something? And, kind of working to calibrate what that right fit is going to look like if you don't get it right the first time.
Yep. Well, and I can say too, so one, I'm having an idea of we should actually publish those, and I can put the link in the notes of this show so that folks can reference and use them as well, because they're really robust, amazing templates. The other thing that's really been valuable for my team in particular, some of our roles, we have more junior folks on the hiring committee in addition to some of the executives, and having the templates has been a really amazing and unique opportunity to provide some upskilling for them, because they don't, they're new to the interview process. And I think in an early stage startup environment, you don't have very officialized, you don't have very formalized training programs yet, right? Like you're just not at that point of your company. And so it's been a really great way to offer coaching to build up the skills of the individual team members in a way that's probably pretty unusual for this stage size. So that's been really great. And I think the postmortem I've heard from some of the folks on my team that it's a valuable opportunity for them to learn it. How does our president look at candidates? Why is he saying yes or no versus why they're saying yes or no? Things along those lines, that it's a level of exposure that they don't necessarily always have, especially at the junior levels. So definitely valuable there. Okay. So two more quick questions and then we'll wrap this up. So outcomes, your offer acceptance rate changed quarter over quarter in addition to the reduction of time to hire. What was the change?
Yeah, we brought it up by, initially it was not pretty. It was like close to 50% or so when I first got here. And, we were very quickly from Q1 to Q2 able to get that up 17%, up 67. Still a long way to go, but, was a huge change for us in terms of, how we were getting some people in the door. So yeah, I mean, we made a pretty swift transition there, which was great.
That's awesome. The other thing that I love that I believe I heard about offer acceptance was that for technical positions, underrepresented minorities, the acceptance rate went up from 37 to 50% as well in that time frame, which I thought was pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Nick. Well, this has been super awesome. Thank you. We close with every podcast. We close with the same question, and it's effectively, what's one thing that you've said today that our listeners should not only remember but take action on?
I think we've really harped on streamlining. So I'll switch it up a little bit here. I think adding a personal touch goes a long way. Kind of going back to my days in agency recruiting. You have to consider that your hiring managers and your candidates, those are your clients, right? They need to be receiving the white glove treatment to the greatest extent possible. And I think it's tough in a remote world sometimes to build these connections with candidates. You're a stranger to them, you don't know, but this even as simple as giving them a call to schedule the next interview versus just sending an email, something like that shows a little more personal touch to it. I think it really goes a long way.
All right.
Thanks, Nick.
We really
incredible information here. Very, very valuable for our listeners.
Well, thank you for having me. And really, really excited and humbled to be on here.
Win top talent while strengthening runway with OpenComp. Thousands of the world's fastest growing companies use our compensation intelligence platform because it offers the most competitive benchmarks and insights available. To learn more, visit app.opencomp.com/signup.